Why, hello there. My name is Jack Lynch, and I was just wondering, have you ever encountered a paranormal situation? Something so indescribably horrific and insane you just can't figure out what or who caused it? If this is the case, you're not alone. I'm about to tell you a thrilling true tale that can be considered psychotic, taboo, or just downright bizarre. This isn't for the faint-hearted, so you've been warned. Located on the shores of West Bay Lake in the far northeast regions of Wisconsin are the ruins of a once grand mansion that was called Summerwind. The house is long gone now because it was destroyed by natural occurrences and wildfire, but the memories remain, as do the stories and legends of the inexplicable events that once took place here. Now we're about to dive deep into what happened at Summerwind. Back in 1916, the mansion was built by a man named Robert P. Lamont as a summer home for he and his family. Nestled on the shores of the lake, the house caught the cool breeze of northern Wisconsin and provided a comfortable place for Lamont to escape the pressures of everyday life in Washington, D.C., as he would later go on to serve as a Secretary of Commerce under President Herbert Hoover. But life was not always sublime at Summerwind during the years of the Lamont family. For those who claim that the ghost stories of the house were created in later years, they forgot the original tale of Robert Lamont's encounter with the spirit. The legends of the house say that, Lamont, he had a pistol, and he thought that he heard something in the house. He was looking around. He thought that there was an intruder, and he heard something behind him, so he turned and shot. He shot twice, but after looking around, there's nothing there. Absolutely nothing. There are bullet holes in the basement doors of the kitchen, and they've remained there for many years. Years have passed, and Robert Lamont, the guy who made the house, he passed away. The house was sold. It was sold again. It seemed that nothing out of the ordinary really happened there, besides Lamont's encounter with the phantom intruder, until the early 1970s. It was in this period that the family living in the house was nearly destroyed, supposedly by ghosts. This guy who goes by the name of Arnold Hinshaw and his wife Ginger, they had 6 kids. They moved into Summerwind in the early part of the 1970s. They'd only resided in the house for 6 months though, but those 6 months were pretty eventful. From the day that they moved in, they knew strange things were going on in the house. It had been vacant for some time, but had apparently been occupied by otherworldly visitors. The Hinshaws and their children immediately started to report vague shapes and shadows flickering down the hallways. They also claimed to hear mumbled voices in dark and empty rooms. When they would walk inside, the sounds would quickly stop. Most alarming was the ghost of a woman who was often seen floating back and forth, just past the French doors that led off into the dining room. After this happened a couple more times, the family wondered if they were simply imagining things, but the events continued. Some of their household appliances, like a hot water heater and the water pump, would mysteriously break down and then repair themselves before a serviceman could be called, which it was just little things like this that they couldn't really explain, but seemed as though that they could be paranormal. Windows and doors would be closed and then reopen on their own. And it was really strange because there was just one window in particular that was especially stubborn compared to all the rest. It would raise and lower itself at all hours. Out of desperation, Arnold, the owner of the house at this time, drove a heavy nail through the window, casing it, and it finally stayed closed. And then one day, Arnold had to get up and go to work. It was just a normal morning. Nothing out of the ordinary was really happening. He gets up, he showers, brushes his teeth, all that stuff. And when he goes off to work, he has everything he needs. He's all dressed up. He gets outside, and once he starts walking to his car, his vehicle suddenly bursted into flames. The car wasn't on, there's no one near it, and they couldn't find out the source of it. After they got some people to come in and look at it, it was just a normal day for weather, and there's no actual information that could be found on what actually caused it. And despite of all of this strange activity, the Hinshaws wanted to make the best of the historic house, so they decided to hire some men to make a few renovations. Usually, the workers would not show up for work. They'd be ill, or they simply just told them that they refused to work there, which was not super weird because this place was known to be haunted. And then, after all the workers never wanted to work or they kept on making excuses, the Hinshaws just gave up and decided to try and do everything by themselves. So, One day, Arnold didn't have work, and the wife was gone, and it was just him at the house. Just for me saying that, you can already tell something creepy is about to happen, right? He's up in one of the bedrooms, and he's just cleaning around. There was a large shoe drawer that was installed in the closet's back wall, and Arnold pulled it out so that, he could paint around it, because he was painting the room at this time. When he pulled it out, he noticed something really weird. And it was a large dark space behind the drawer. And, it kind of smelled funny. It didn't smell like what a house should smell like. So, he did what any reasonable person would do. And he went downstairs and he grabbed a flashlight. When he came back upstairs, he shined the flashlight on the dark spot. And it was really hard to make out exactly what he saw. But it looked like that something definitely got back there and died. So, he didn't really know what to do. He was assuming it was like a raccoon or something. So he just kept it there. He continued painting and waiting for his children to come home from school later. So once his kids finally get home from school, his daughter Mary, which she was about 9 or 10 at the time, he had her go back in the crawl space and try and find out what was there. So, the whole family was here at this point. It was Ginger, Arnold, Mary. When Mary was going back there, they had the flashlight and everything, and when she finally got to the body, they discovered it was a human corpse. She saw the skull, still bearing dirty black hair, a brown arm, and a portion of a leg. Now, as you can see, you think that maybe at this point, the family would really want to get out of here. And you think that after they find this body, they would, contact authorities or tell someone. But for reasons unknown, they didn't tell anyone about the body. But shortly after the discovery of the body in the hidden compartment, everything started to get really bad at Summerwind and for the Arnold family. Arnold began staying up very late at night and playing an organ that the couple had purchased before moving into the house. He had always enjoyed playing the organ, using it as a form of relaxation, but his playing was now different. Instead of it being really nice and relaxed, it was just more of a frenzy of a mixture of a bunch of melodies and a bunch of random notes. And it was really kind of sinister and dark. And as it got later at night, he kept on playing it louder and louder. His wife Ginger asked him many times to stop because it was frightening her and the children, but he just would not. It seemed that Arnold was having a complete mental breakdown, and at the same time, Ginger attempted suicide. After a while, more and more craziness just kept on going on, and Arnold was sent away for treatment. So Ginger and the children moved to Granton, Wisconsin to live with Ginger's parents. Ginger and Arnold would eventually be divorced when it looked as though Arnold's hopes for recovery were failing. Ginger later recovered her health, away from Summerwind at last, and she married a man named George Olson. Things seemed to be going quite well for her in her new peaceful life, until a few years later, her father decided to tell her some interesting news. He wanted to buy Summerwind, which she just couldn't absolutely believe, because, of everything crazy that happened here. She started going insane, her old husband went completely insane, and he's just gone now. And her own father is telling her that he wants to buy the place. But she actually never told her about anything that really happened there. Any of the paranormal activities that happened there. She obviously told her dad about her and Arnold, but everything else she's kind of left out. But her father, Beaubert, he claimed to know who the ghost was who was haunting the place, and he really wanted to go there and, try and find out what was actually going on. So, it was out of Ginger's power, so looks like that they all go back to Summerwind, and they all move back in. Now, once they finally all move back in, the father, Beaubert, he starts looking around with one of his friends, and Ginger's kind of looking around too. But after a while, he starts just going crazy on the place. He starts ripping apart everything, and he starts just digging deep because he really wants to find some information about what happened here in the past. Now, Ginger doesn't like this, and she's trying to get him to stop. And then she slips and mentions something about the dead body that was there, which apparently they just never ended up moving, which I think is really weird. But anyways, the father, as soon as she told him about that, he got the information about where the body was, so he sprints there. And just like Arnold before him, he pulls back the drawer. He looks in the crevice behind where the body should still be, but the body was gone. After Arnold and Ginger left, no one else came into the house. It was just empty, it was vacant. But the dead body was gone, which no one else knew about the body. They didn't tell anyone about the body. Only the family knew that, and when they came back again, it was just gone. So what could have possibly have moved this? After this whole experience, Beaubert starts talking about who he thinks the ghost is. He believes that the ghost was a man named Jonathan Carver, an 18th century British explorer who was haunting the house and searching for an old deed that had been given to him by the Sioux Indians. I definitely pronounced that wrong. But in the document, he supposedly had the rights to the northern third of Wisconsin. The deed had supposedly been placed in a box and sealed into the foundation of Summerwind. Beaubert claimed that Carver had asked him to help him finding this, through a dream of course. So it kind of seems like that everyone who lives here kind of starts just going crazy after a while. But regardless, Beaubert wrote a book about his experiences at Summerwind and his communications with Carver through his dreams, his trances, and a Ouija board. The book was published in 1979 under the name of Wolfgang von Beaubert and was called The Carver Effect. It is currently out of print and very hard to find nowadays, in case if you wanted to pick that up and read it. Shortly after Beaubert bought the house, toward the end of summer, Carl decided to go to the house. He just wanted to get a repair estimate on some parts of the house, wanted to try and get rid of the bats that were residing there, and he also planned to do some yard work. It started to rain the first day he was there, so he began closing some of the windows. When he went upstairs, there was obviously a dark hallway, and he heard a voice call his name. And remember, he was in the house all by himself. He looked around a bit, but there was no one there. Carl closed the window and went back downstairs. He walked into the front room and heard what sounded like 2 pistol shots. He ran into the kitchen and found a room filled with smoke and the thick smell of gunpowder. Apparently someone had fired a gun inside the house, but he was there by himself. So, Carl searched the place, finding the doors locked and undisturbed. Which, remember, before all this, he went through and he locked all the windows and he locked all the doors. So there appeared to be no one inside the house, unless if there was someone inside the house already before he locked everything. And when he went back into the room where he heard the gunshots, he was looking around and discovered 2 bullet holes in the door leading down to the basement. He examined them closely and realized they were not new shots at all, but the old bullet holes that had worn smooth around the edges. They were apparently the holes left behind from Robert Lamont's encounter with the ghost in the kitchen so many years before. Perhaps the events of the past were replaying themselves? But no matter the explanation, this was definitely enough for Carl, so he decided to leave the house that afternoon. So back to the old plans of hiring people to come in and work on the house started to continue. But workmen often refused to stay on the job, complaining of tools disappearing and feeling as if they were being watched. Marie Beaubert agreed with their complaints. She was always uneasy in the house and frequently told people that she felt if she was being followed from place to place whenever she was inside. The most disturbing thing to Beaubert, however, was the apparent shrinkage and expansion of the house. Beaubert would measure rooms one day and then find that they were a different size the next day. Usually his measurements were larger than those given in the blueprints of the house, sometimes greatly larger. At one point, Beaubert estimated that he could seat 150 people in his restaurant that he wanted to turn Somerset into. But after laying out his plans on the blueprints of Summerwind, he realized that the place could seat half that many. Photographs that were taken of the house using the same camera and taking only seconds apart also display the variations of space. The living room was said to show the greatest enlargement. So Bober compared some of the photos that he's already taken and compared them with the ones that Ginger had taken along with Arnold when they first moved in. Ginger's photos showed curtains on the windows that she took with her when she moved out. The curtains were physically absent in the room that Bober photographed, but somehow they appeared in the photos. So you know what I'm saying there? Like, they weren't there, but when he takes the picture, these curtains showed up that were removed when Ginger moved out a couple years ago. So, like the incident involving Carl earlier in the pistol shots, could Summerwind be a place where time repeats itself? Perhaps the place wasn't haunted at all, but instead it was a mysterious site where time was distorted in some ways that we cannot fully understand. Perhaps the shadows and the figures that we're seeing could have been people or images from the past or the future. And perhaps the sound of someone calling Carl's name would happen in reality several months later. We will never know for sure, but the idea is something worth considering. Eventually, the whole project was abandoned for Bober and his dream of the restaurant and the inn. Strangely though, despite his claims that he was an earthly companion of the ghost Jonathan Carver, the Bobers never spent the night inside the house. They chose instead to sleep in an RV that they parked on the grounds. Also, strange was the fact that Carver, if the ghost actually existed, chose to manifest himself in such malevolent ways, especially if he was looking for help in finding the deed. Bober's explanation for this is that the ghost didn't want anyone to be renovating the house because he would be afraid that someone would, move around the deed or possibly destroy it before he would be able to find it. So, what Bober would do, he obviously searched around the place trying to find where the deed was. But, to this day, the deed has never been found. Finally, in the later 1970s, the Bobers eventually moved out. And then in the early 1980s, the house fell deeper and deeper into ruin as Mother Nature started taking her over. But in 1986, the house was purchased by 3 investors who wanted to try and bring the house back around again. But this wasn't going to happen because in June of 1988, the house was caught in the middle of a vicious storm, and a bolt of lightning came down and struck the house and burnt it down to the ground. And today, only the foundations, the stone chimneys, and perhaps the ghost remain. Hopefully after all that you guys can sleep well tonight, but I can assure you that everything in this story that I just told you is 100% accurate, according to eyewitness accounts of course. Now, do you believe in the paranormal? Whether if the answer is yes or no, I think it'd be wise for you to watch out for anything out of the ordinary. Just to be safe. But anyways, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.